Chapter 8. By Day and by Night. Day followed day. The Amistad made her track through the trackless waters. At first, in the daytime, her course was uncertain and wavering, subject to the wind, but it was not long before the handling of the ship steadied under Grabo's teaching. Callie, especially, became skillful at reefing or letting out sail. He spent little time on the cluttered deck. Most of his waking hours were passed on the lookout for or climbing in the rigging high on the fore topsail mast. He was sure-footed and quick, and soon learned to tell one line from another, so that the puffing sails responded to his bidding. These claws that catch the wind are a good thing, he said to Marga one day when they had climbed to the lookout together. When I get home, I will ask my sister to weave me a cloth. I will fasten it to my canoe. Then no one will be able to overtake me on the river. The thought of weaving reminded him of his mother. He would have liked to speak of his mother's skill at making cloth. But he did not know, he thought. He would never know if his mother was in the land of the living. So he did not speak her name. But the girl read Callie's silent thought. She sat quiet for a moment in sympathy. Then she smiled and agreed that cloth to catch the wind was a wonderful thing. But skillful as the Negroes became, there was a difference in the speed of the ship by day and by night. At night, Montes came to life and the ship with him. The Spaniard was an experienced navigator. Though he had only Ruiz and Antonio for crew, he pushed the schooner to the utmost. All through the night, the ship's prow cut a straight, smooth path in the water. Only at dawn was there apt to be a wavering. Tua slept badly. The gunshot wound throbbed with dull throbbing and kept him awake. Every morning he would listen to the noises above on deck. He had no confidence in the white man, but as long as the stars were their stars, he could do nothing. So he remained silent, a thing for which he afterward blamed himself. On the seventh day there was a storm. The ship rolled frightfully, dipping her yards into the water on each side. Fully, one of the young men climbed the ropes to help Callie get the sails lowered. In his haste, he lost his balance and fell into the sea and was lost. At the sound of the cries of those who saw Fully drown, Montes came on deck. Since there was no guiding sun, he said that he would take the wheel. He ordered the Negroes below, and they obeyed. Cinque was very grateful to the white man. It was good to know that even in this storm, the Amistad was pushing homeward. The next day, the sun came out, and there was a new rejoicing. Nakauki discovered a guitar in the forecastle under one of the hammocks that had belonged to the sailors. It had the wrong number of strings, and the tones were coarse, but it was at least an instrument for making music. His fingers plucked the strings with the pleasure of a hungry man who eats again. Go ye ahead upon the way. Tell them we are coming like bright lizards running. But as day followed day without a glimpse of shore, the voyagers on the Amistad found out there is such a thing as too much sun. The drinking water turned brackish and the corn moldy. The rice had long given out, and all such luxuries as meat or butter. The confinement, the lack of good food, the unchanging sunlight joined together and brought on a fever. Sickness went through the ship like fire through a parched field. 5 boys and men died, 4 in one day. They were mourned not as strangers, mourned by strangers. They had become known to each other. They had homes. They had a country to which they were returning. It was very sad to die so near the end of the voyage. So sang Nakauki in a morning song, thinking surely the voyage cannot last much longer. There cannot be much more of the endless sweep of water. Nakoki's song woke a violent hope in the voyagers. When they woke and came from below in the morning, they rushed from one side of the ship to the other, saying, "Has it come in the night? Is our land visible?" When the sun set on empty sea, on the wide circle of nothingness, they lay down, saying, "It will surely come in the night." The schooner, meanwhile, presented a pitiable sight. The top part of the foremast had snapped off in the storm, like a palm tree in the woods. Ruiz would lean against the stump and entertain himself half the night listing the ship's shortcomings. "Look at her," he would say, fascinated. "Paint on her side puffed out and cracked, sails torn, stern piece encrusted with barnacles. Every time she rises on a sea, I'll bet she shows her copper torn like waste paper. We ought to pound her rust off," he'd say, and then pendulum like his mind would swing away from that idea. The wilder the Amistad's looks became, the more chance there'd be of gaining attention of any passing ship. Now that they had come to the open sea, that was Ruiz's great hope, the dream of rescue. Once or twice on deck in the night, they even glimpsed a ship's light, like some misplaced star on the distant horizon. On a clear sunny afternoon, there came bearing down on the Amistad a beautiful sight. A vessel in full sail, leaning over to the breeze. Sailors could be seen, grouped on the forecastle, the cook leaning out of the cookhouse. The captain shouted through a speaking trumpet. There was a flag with red stripes on it, an American flag. Through the porthole in the cabin, Ruiz saw the vessel. Montes had to stop him forcibly from rushing out to demand that the Negroes draw alongside. The most Ruiz could do was to tie a rag on a stick and fly it as a signal of distress out of the porthole. But the vessel shifted its course to the leeward side and the signal went unheeded. Another time, Callie, on the lookout, sighted a small fishing sloop. When the sloop hove in hailing distance, Fulway put a small boat down and, taking Antonio with him, went to bargain for meat and fresh water. As it turned out, Antonio's Spanish was as useless as Fulway's own native language, but the coins that Cinque provided from the captain's chest served instead of spoken language. Ruiz this time broke loose from Montes's clutches and ran up the hatchway, shouting hysterically. However, the fishermen pulled away with great promptness after the bargaining was finished. It was not every day that you can exchange a cask of water and a side of salt pork for $10 gold. Grabble watched the sloop go over the horizon. "When I first saw people on a boat like that in Lomboko," he said, "I thought the ship was their home, that they knew no other. I picked up a piece of earth to show them, as if they had never seen the earth. They laughed to find some simple person, one who believed that human creatures could make a home on the sea. Now," he said bitterly, "I think we will be that new kind of people, living on this ship, never to see the land again." "I dreamed, but I was not aware that I was dreaming," Cinque said to Tua one morning before daybreak in the cabin. "I stood by a small river, and there was a single tree trunk forming a bridge, but when I tried to cross it, a chameleon ran in my path. I do not care for the chameleon. He is a death bringer. Yet I crossed. This I know, because I could see myself on the other side as well. I walked up a small hill with one banana tree growing on it. I wanted a banana for my son." "You are lucky to dream," Tua responded. "Since I had those irons on, I have had no dreams. Even my spirit is not free to wander." "But soon, very soon, dear Tua, you will see the living earth again. Already we have passed the second moon," Cinque answered. "Even the moon," said Tua, "is not in its proper place in the heavens. The food bought from the fishing boat lasted only a few days. Then there was only cornmeal and biscuits covered with a green mold, and few in number. Fulway counted them with despairing eyes. Fagina failed to wake up one morning. The body of the little man, who had been a slave even in the Mandi country, was discovered by Fulway. He could not help a sigh of relief that there was one less to feed from that day onward, but he spared a little of his own biscuit to put in Fagina's burial bowl. It was on this same day that Callie caught the land bird. He saw a flock winging its way across the masthead and went up the rigging, hand over hand, foot after foot. Coming to the crossbeam, he stretched out his hand and brought down a bird. A land bird! There was a shout of fierce delight. The small brown creature was passed from hand to hand as if it were something miraculous. Then Fernie asked what was the name of the bird, saying she had never seen one of just such color and markings, and with the bill shaped so. The voyagers looked at one another, and true happiness passed out of their faces. A land bird surely, but not from their own land. It was noticed now that the flock was going away from the sun, not toward it. The birds were even as the stars were not theirs. A silence swept over the ship as they ceased to watch the flock of strange birds overhead. They turned to Cinque with one unspoken question. There was usually a rhythm and serenity in all Cinque's movements which spread confidence. When he lifted his face and looked about him, people ceased to fret and were at peace. This was the effect Cinque had on those around him. But now darkness settled on his face. His hands left the wheel. His arms hung loose at his side. His head dropped between his shoulders. After a while, he lifted his head again as if he had pushed some thought away from him, as if it were too great a burden. "What is one bird?" asked Cinque, when night had come and he had retired with Tua to the cabin. But Tua remembered the noises of the white men at the helm in the early daylight. Remembered? The thing had never, throughout the voyage, been really far from his mind. It lay just beneath his waking thought, a constant troubling burden. Now, at last, it was clear enough. The course the white men sailed in the night was not their course. As the stars and the birds were strangers, so would the land be.